Coach Tom Brands.
All right, thanks. Fans are going to be relying on the media because there aren't going to be fans in the arena. So you guys got a big job to do, singing the message of Iowa Hawkeye Wrestling. So that's my introduction. Another introduction, Terry Brands is here. Larry Lee is here. And really the real show is a little bit of the past, the recent past, honoring Spencer Lee for that Hodge Trophy. And we got Brian and Mike Chapman here, Brian Van Clay and Mike Chapman here from, they're the genesis of that. So, and I'll introduce them when we're done. Fire away. Let's get this show on the road.
Tom, obviously normally wrestlers have 20, 30 matches going into a national tournament. This year they'll have as many as maybe 10 or 11. Is there a number that athletes need to have to compete at the highest level?
I think that you train your body and your mind and your spirit to the point where nothing really matters. Things happen that upset the apple cart, and you could have a regular season that's normal and only end up with, you could just wrestle in the qualifier, for instance, and have to go to the national tournament. So you take it and you do the best you can with it. And when you have an edge, you'll be okay.
Outside of the national championship, you guys have all the pieces back from a year ago except for one. How do you improve or surpass what the team was able to accomplish a year ago?
You get to the end, and that would have been in my introduction, but I was saving it for my segue into introducing the Hodge Trophy. But the bottom line is I mean, you go out there and you do your job. You do your job. So you got a follow-up?
Well, in addition to that, Ironman is that new piece. How does he kind of fit in to the lineup and the puzzle for this year?
I mean, here's the thing. You have to get to the end. We have new pieces. We have new pieces that are old faces. And you could argue that Spencer Lee is better than he's ever been. And that's a scary thing. He has to go out and prove that and show that off. So that's probably the first thing. You talk about the new faces like Ironman, absolutely, but you don't forget about Happel. Mirren's moving up to 149. I think he was listed at 41. You get into the specifics of the lineup, but really we got to get to the end. We have to get to the national tournament. Are you listening, NCAA? Are you listening? Because these are young people that aspire to things. And they're in an age demographic that it's not as risky. It's always risky. It's risky when I drive from here to the arena. I might get sideswiped by a cam bus, all right, because I'm not looking. And we got to get to the end this year. And then we got to get to Tokyo. And I'm passionate about that. It cannot go down the way it went down a year ago. So here we are in January. We're starting. We thank the Big Ten. We got a schedule, and away we go. And we do it every day. We're diligent. We do it every day. Every one of those guys in that Hawkeye wrestling room, they do it right. They wear their mask. They screen in. They're doing daily testing now. Before that, they were doing weekly testing. Even if they have a negative test and they don't feel right, they have a cough or a throat issue, they stay away. So they're doing it right. We got to get to the end.
Tom, USA Wrestling sponsored a lot of events and they had a lot of success. Did wrestling learn anything from their events? Because I know there's been a couple college duels that have been canceled because of COVID, but otherwise wrestling has done well. What have you guys learned from what their events were?
Wrestling's done well. It started with the rooftop thing in Chicago. Good job. Awesome, and that kind of started it. And then you had a flow event maybe or whatever. We had our own event. USA Wrestling put on a big event, and we had fans. And it was right here in the Mecca of wrestling in the United States. It wasn't anywhere but Iowa, and it wasn't anywhere except Coralville, Iowa. And there's a lot of good people, starting with our administration and then going to Josh Schamberger and our own program. They're advocates for getting this thing going and keeping it going the right way. They're advocates for that.
But a lot of people outside of wrestling were concerned because it's such a man-to-man sport. It would be the hardest to get going. But why has wrestling done so well?
Wrestling, you first of all, you sterilize yourself when you take a shower. We've been dealing with this forever. We've been dealing with skin issues or whatever without getting into details. You sterilize the mats on a daily basis, more than one time a day if you're on the mat more than one time a day. We've been doing that before the pandemic. Wrestling is way ahead. Wrestling is a one-on-one sport with a referee. It's not 5-on-5 or 11-on-11. And, here's the thing, to compare us to other sports, silliness. To compare other sports to other sports, silliness. Wrestling has a lot of experience of being very, very clean.
How much did the not getting to the end motivate this team this year?
I think that our guys think of these things as individuals. That's one of the greatest things that we have. We have a great group that's tight. They're together. We've had to be together as a country, as a world through this pandemic, and our guys have come together as well through that. They dealt with it in their own ways, and when that message came down, they handled it, and they've been handling it ever since. We got in that wrestling room on June 8th. These guys weren't in that wrestling room until June 8th. Our administration, we were front line. We were a trial program along with maybe a hospital program, one other sport, and maybe somewhere else on campus. So there were 3 or 4 entities on campus that were the frontline trial. Wrestling was one of them because of the discipline of wrestlers, because of how wrestlers handle adversity. Maybe because of how our team handled adversity and the leadership that we had. And back then it was Lugo, Marinelli, and Lee and company. And then all of a sudden it became Lugo, Marinelli, and Lee because Lugo won a Big Ten championship, Kemmer, and because Lugo won a Big Ten championship, Lugo graduates. Now we got Lee, Marinelli, Kemmer, Cassiope, DeSanto, Mirren, Ironman, and you see guys making progress, and like Nelson Brands, Abe Assad, they're going to be head-to-head again. There's great things going on. And there's great things going on because of how they handle themselves on a daily basis through whatever. To us, it's not even to me. To us, the battles on a daily basis, your awareness and your energy doesn't rise because all of a sudden now there's a pandemic in your life. It's the same battle. It's steady. We're going to be okay, but you got to get us to the end. We did it your way. Now you got to come our way. These are young people, and we know this is serious business, and we do it right.
Tom, the NCAA season, the Big Ten was one of the last conferences to announce a schedule. Were you ever concerned that it wasn't going to happen?
I mean, you have faith in your leadership. And so, like my daily conversations with my bosses, Barbara Burke and Gary Barta, the schedule will come when the schedule comes. They weren't controlling that. And the biggest thing that I could tell them was that our frustration isn't with you. Our frustration is with, the Big Ten is the leader in sports, let alone wrestling, but it's definitely the leader in wrestling. And yet, these other conferences have taken the lead. That's what was frustrating. Not because we didn't think that we weren't going to get a schedule or compete, but because the propaganda is used against us. And you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. And it's hard when the propaganda is going against you and they can say, oh, Iowa's ducking institution X and institution Y. Well, we have a policy that we can't wrestle anybody outside the Big Ten until the national tournament. So how are we ducking you? Well, that narrative was put out there by the ninnies of the world in the sport of wrestling, and it hurt the Big Ten. It hurt the Big Ten. That's my competitive edge coming out. And that's where the frustration was. It wasn't with the Big Ten or the Big Ten leadership. This is real. This COVID is real. They're figuring it out every day. It's changing. And oh, by the way, our critical incident management team, led by, the leader of that, name slips me, but Andy Peterson is our team doctor, and he's front line. So he's front line. And these are very, very smart people that are patient with us. So we got the best of all worlds. We got smart people working for us. We got great administration that understands that, hey, we understand that the propaganda is being used against you. And so they're working too. So we got a lot of good things going on where it's collective.
Can you comment on Spencer's dominance last season and what a Hodge winner does for a particular program?
The Hodge Trophy there's no controversy on who the Hodge Trophy winner was in 2020. That shows the dominance. In other years, there's been some maybe where somebody feels like they got left out. And even with a guy like Kyle Snyder winning it one year, if my history's right, my memory's right, there was still another guy that maybe, whatever. And this one, without a doubt, and Chris Brewer has the stats. So, Brewer, you want to put them in my ear right here? What was the points? Like what?
51 and a 56 first place vote.
Okay, but not forget about that. I'm talking about the points. Like the
He outscored his opponents like 286 to 18.
286 to 18 in points scored. And then, and I'm gonna say it again. And I'm going to say it again. I'm going to call out the media again. Because then there was a published article. And maybe this is to keep an edge and keep putting an edge on Spencer. And the rest of our guys, first thing, rest of our guys should be competing against Spencer in a healthy teammate way to go get that Hodge for themselves. Cameron Marinelli, DeSanto, Cassiope, Mirren, Young, Nelson, Saad, Warner, so on and so forth. Ironman. And then the other thing is that Flow Wrestling, then they publish an article that knocks Spencer because he scored X amount of points in the first period, and he only scored X amount of points in the second and third period. They didn't get out of the first period. The match never made it out of the first period. How do you score points in the second and third period? I love it. I love it.
Tom, in these duels, will there be extra matches like some of these other teams are doing to give your non-starters a chance also to compete?
There are extra matches that are permissible this year that are countable. There will be wrestled in the same format as the rules of a 7-minute college match. There's a couple differences, but yes, we can have extra matches. And that's important because we have a freshman class that is high-powered. We have Brett Lee Reyna and Jesse Ibarra and Colin Shriever and Patrick Kennedy and Schroeder and Gabe Christensen. So those guys will be getting matches as well.
Is there any other questions for Tom? Tom, would you like to introduce
All right.
Chapman?
Okay, first of all, Mike Chapman, known him a long time. And nobody better when it comes to, first of all, being a great friend, but nobody better when it comes to a very healthy, fanatical mind for competition. And it doesn't matter what that competition is. And he's written books about football players. He's written books about fighters, Bruce Lee. He's written biographies on all different of the best. People who had to break race barriers. And he grew up in Waterloo, which is a notoriously good, great wrestling community. And he grew up in that era when Dan Gable was coming through, but it wasn't just Gable. And it was buzzards and the names that maybe Gable cut his teeth on. And so this guy's got a lot of perspective, and I have a lot of respect for him, my brother and I, if I can speak for Terry. So that's my introduction for Mike Chapman, and then Brian Van Clay with Win Magazine. Mike Chapman is the genesis of the Dan Hodge Trophy. He's the genesis of Win Magazine and the Win Museum, which is now the Dan Gable Museum. And all those are still very successful. And there's no more sought after award in college wrestling than the Hodge Trophy. Because you know what? National tournament OWs have losses on their record. Hodge Trophy winners, with rare exception, do not. If you get a loss, it pretty much erases you have to be on every time. And so I told our team that the Hodge Trophy is legitimized once again in 2020. Thank you, Spencer Lee. I thanked him in front of our team. And we got unfinished business. So let's finish this business. And let's honor the 2020 Hodge Trophy winner and bring up Brian Van Clay from Win Magazine. And Mike Chapman, the genesis of the Dan Hodge Trophy. Thank you. Yep.
I hate following Tom Brands. Every time he talks, I just want to go work out. For those of you who don't know me, I've been working out for 61 years. I'm 77. I lift weights or get on a cardio machine 6-7 days a week. I'm going to give you a little history lesson, and this is meant for Spencer. Was anybody in here born before 1960? You were? I saw my first wrestling meet at the University of Iowa in 1960, Spencer. Let me tell you what it was like. You came in the old field house, you walked up a flight of stairs on a Saturday afternoon. There were basketball games going on all over the main floor and the auxiliary gyms. You walked to the north gym, auxiliary gym, you paid 50 cents and you walked in a Saturday afternoon, and there were usually 200 to 300 people in the gym. That was my first experience to University of Iowa wrestling when I was a sophomore in high school. Fast forward to 1972. I'm the assistant sports editor of the Iowa City Press-Citizen. Gary Kirtlemeyer has just been named the head coach to replace Dave McCuskey. He calls me over to his office. We're sitting in an office about the size of from Spencer to here and about this. It wasn't even that big. And that was Gary's office and his secretary, and the two of us are sitting there. He says, Mike, I'm going to transform Iowa wrestling. We're going to wrestle on the main floor of the field house on Saturday nights. We're going to have crowds of 3,000 to 4,000. And I'm thinking, wow, well, I'd sure like to see that happen. And I'm going to hire Dan Gable as my assistant. I broke out laughing. I said, the other things may be possible, but how are you going to get Dan Gable away from Iowa State? You know what happened. Dan came, the dynasty took off. But I would like everybody to know how humble it was. When I became sports editor of the Cedar Rapids Gazette in 1976, I got to cover all the Iowa Hawkeye meets. I've been to 47 NCAA tournaments, and I saw the dynamic that Iowa wrestling became. The parties were legendary. The atmosphere, the excitement. And you guys got to understand, it wasn't always like this. It wasn't always like this. And Gable built something. He brought in wrestlers like the Bannicks and Randy Lewis and Barry Davis. And dare I say, those two guys from Sheldon, Tom and Terry Brands. And the crowds went crazy, and the media jumped on board. And it was so fun and so exciting to see Iowa build this very special program that's talked about around the country, not just in Iowa, And not just in wrestling circles. Tom Cruise knows about Iowa wrestling. People know about Iowa wrestling. So I decided in 1995 I wanted to create something special. I always admired the Heisman Trophy, the publicity it got, the marketing it got, how the media jumped on it. And I said, why can't wrestling have something like that? So I decided I was going to start my own trophy. And what to call it? What to call it? Well, I'd become very good friends with Dan Hodge. In 1976, I wrote a book, two guys named Dan, about Dan Hodge and Dan Gable. And Dan and I connected, and he became like my older brother. And we were so close. And Spencer, here's what Dan Hodge represents. 3-time NCAA champ. Never beaten in college, never taken down. 2-time OW at the NCAA tournament. At one point, he pinned 22 people in a row. That was the NCAA record till a guy named Gable came along and pinned 24 in a row. His junior year, Spencer, in 1956, he wins the NCAA with 4 straight pins. He wins the Freestyle Nationals 2 weeks later with 5 straight pins. He'd never entered a Greco tournament, but was right there at that same venue, so he enters that, and he wins that with 4 straight pins. So in 3 weeks' time, Dan Hodge wins 3 national titles with 13 consecutive pins. Later, he becomes the only wrestler ever to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated to this day. And he holds the distinction of being the only man in athletic history to win national titles in boxing and wrestling. He was 17-0 with 14 knockouts. Now, Spencer, I'm not advocating you go into boxing when you're done with wrestling. But I want you to know the legacy of the Dan Hodge Trophy. Brian Van Clay of Win Magazine is my partner. Win Magazine and Culture House are the sponsors. The presenting company is TW Promotions out of New York, and ASICS. They've been wonderful partners. Neil Duncan and Nick Gallo are just wonderful, wonderful people. They wish they could be here. They can't for obvious reasons. But we know 1 million people have seen the Hodge Trophy presented in person. That's at wrestling banquets and at football games in the fall. Only 2 other Hawkeyes have ever won it. There's a lot of them that could have, and maybe should have. Spencer, you're walking in hallowed footsteps. You're one of 3 Hawkeyes. You're one of 3 Hawkeyes in the greatest sports program I've ever seen in my 50 years of sports journalism, with 2 of my favorite people in the history of wrestling running the show, Tom and Terry Brands. And it is a great honor that we present the 2020 Dan Hodge Trophy to Spencer Lee. I would like to make one other comment. Dan Hodge passed away Christmas Eve at the age of 88. Spencer has the distinction of being the last Dan Hodge Trophy winner while Dan was still alive. And believe me, Dan Hodge knew who Spencer Lee was. And the last time I talked to him, I told her Spencer had won it. He said, what a great choice. Spencer Lee, Dan Hodge Trophy winner. Everybody right here? It's all yours. Now you got to really work for it. You got to give a talk.
Hello. Well, I'm honored. So, take any questions, and I'm third. I don't know. That's crazy to me.
I have a question.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Are you going to try to win it again next year?
Absolutely. How many multiple timers are there? 3? 4. 4? My bad. My history's wrong.
Spencer, you could hear Tom Brand's passion of what happened into the last year to now. Could you match his passion and talk about what the past, 300 days have been like for you as a wrestler?
Well, it's been hard, but as a team, we've come together, and we know that this is a big year for us. We, like you keep saying, unfinished business, and we got guys who have, we have 2 little chips on their shoulders. We had a great season last year, but as you all know, that NCAA tournament is the pinnacle of wrestling, and you don't really feel like your season's finished unless you win that. So, I'm not going to say that I didn't deserve the Hodge Trophy, but, I'm also the only one that's ever won the Hodge that didn't win a national title, if you think about that, right? So, I'm hoping to, win it next year and win a national title and, earn it this time in my mind. Not to say I didn't deserve it or whatnot, but in my head it's iffy because I might be the last one in Dan Hodge's name, but I wish I could have won it next year and shook his hand. Maybe he might have broke my hand, but he's pretty strong, right? But and he actually plays a big part in my life too, Dan Hodge. I mean, we have pictures of me when I was like 8 years old, Tulsa tournaments, kickoff classic and stuff. So really wish I could have seen him again. And he signed Sports Illustrated for me probably like 4 months ago. So that was really cool. But yeah, we're excited this year. And we're getting ready, and we're going to put on a show. So be ready for it.
How are you going to balance your personal goals with the Iowa Hawkeyes with that of your country?
Well, nothing changes. What's next is the biggest thing. So what next for me right now is, we got Nebraska on the 15th, and that's what's next. And then I'm going to do my best every time out, just like my teammates. And ultimately, my goal is to be an Olympic champion. But first off, I have to, win a lot of matches before that is even possible. And then, NCAAs, and then Olympic trials. And if I win Olympic trials, then in August, Olympics in Tokyo. And that's one by one. You can't skip. You can't take the easy way out. So, got to take it the nice, easy, hard way, and work your butt off, and go out and put on a show. So.
Growing up or being recruited, was this something you envisioned for yourself, winning this trophy, and now that it's actually come to fruition and you're holding it up outside of everyone wearing masks, is it something you expected a couple years ago?
I mean, I never really thought about winning the Hodge Trophy. I pretty much only cared about winning 4 national titles. That was kind of like the only thing I cared about. I knew it was a possibility to win when my freshman year, I think I had 2 techs, 2 pins, and I won 5-0 in the finals, or 5-1 I think it was actually. So, I was pretty close to getting the OW that year as well as a true freshman. So, I knew there was a possibility. I had losses in my record, though, so I wasn't even able to be up for the Hodge Trophy. I had 2 losses that year. So, you got to go undefeated. Like I said, it's pretty hard to do. Got to be ready, be at your best each time out. So, but yeah, I saw that I was able to do it, and it was an honor just to be nominated, and I'm humbled to have won. So.
You've wrestled a long time, kind of a similar question, but when did you first realize what the Hodge Trophy was all about, and who were some of those winners you might have emulated growing up?
Obviously Cale Sanderson is, I think, did he win it 3 times? Crazy, man. He probably could have won it 4 too, to be honest, but which would have been obviously, I don't think anyone else would ever have done that. But, yeah, him and, obviously Dan Gable and Ironside, the other Hawkeyes that have won it were definitely, they're idols to me. Just the way they wrestled. They were just physical, and they ran people off the mat, that Iowa style that, Gable instilled into, his athletes and stuff. But, I don't really wrestle like that, but I like to put a lot of points on the board too. So I do it a different way, but,
It looked for a period of time like that wasn't going to be possible. I know it's sort of old news now, but what was your feeling when you found out that you were going to have that opportunity, and did that kind of reinvigorate you a little bit?
I wasn't worried too bad because I believe in our administration and whatever it would have taken. I know that they would have done everything they could to have gotten me another year. I had two, maybe 3 red shirts I could have possibly taken and to lose a year having Olympic red shirt and a normal red shirt and whatnot would have been pretty hard on me just because other guys took Olympic red shirts and I chose to compete for the University of Iowa and represent. I wanted to win a national title. I promised President Bruce Harrell that I'd win him one. I know that he's retiring soon, so hopefully he doesn't retire before March 20th, so I can adhere to that promise that I made as a freshman. So, but I'm excited. I'm just glad that I got this year, and then next year we'll be worried about it when that time comes, right?
Spencer, I know you don't have a lot of fears for a lot of things, but were you ever surprised or concerned how wrestling would fit in the COVID thing? And did you think this day was going to come, or were you ever afraid that this was going to be canceled at all?
I was just focused on myself and getting ready for a season. We were ready for a season, in June. If they said, hey, national tournaments in, whenever, right, August, get ready, we would have been ready. So we were just focused on ourselves and listen to protocol. You know, they know it's best. The University of Iowa has our best interest at heart, and we're listening to them. I mean, right now we're daily testing, and you know, we're gonna be ready to go. So I had no doubt in my mind that they would do whatever is best for us, and had we not competed, that would have been what's best for us, and we would have trusted in them. So.
Last season, you guys had really good chemistry. How has that improved or grown since March, when you guys have dealt with this together?
Yeah, I mean, we're like in a bubble, right? So we're definitely, I wouldn't say that we're closer because I don't know how you get much closer than our team is now, but we had to be around each other more because you can't really go out and do anything, really. You gotta be smart. You gotta be, you know, prepared to take those, you know, I wouldn't say not those risks, but take those, I don't know. It's hard to not put yourself out there. I mean, we're pretty much going from home to practice back home, and the only time we really go out is if we want to go out to eat with then we're together. You know, we're still together. We know that's what's best for us because we don't want to take any risks to, you know, hurt our teammates. You know, you know, we're a family, so one person runs out, you know, it's not like he's, you know, off-casted or out-casted, right? He affects everyone. So everyone knows their place and their part, and that's to, you know, do the best they can, work as hard as they can to make sure everyone stays healthy and keeping everyone healthy. So.
Any other questions for Spencer?
Yeah, with the this regular season is only being Big Ten, what do you think this means for this team? This being Big Ten schedule.
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
All Big Ten schedule. What do you think?
Yeah.
All Big Ten schedule means for this team.
Well, I mean, best conference in wrestling, and we're gonna have good competition, and it's gonna be fun. I mean, it's you know, we're not gonna get, you know, the Cy-Hawk duel or the typical Oklahoma State duel that everyone looks forward to every year as well. But you know, Big Ten duels are pretty exciting, so it's gonna be fun, and we're ready to go. So doesn't matter who we're wrestling.
Loaded question for Mike Chapman. Has there ever been a Sullivan Award winner and a Hodge Trophy winner?
No. Number one, right here.
Really? Not even Snyder?
He never won the Hodge.
Really? That's crazy.
Sadly, he didn't meet all the qualifications. I mean, he certainly was deserving of winning the Hodge, but there's certain standards, and
Oh, matches, right? He only had like 9 matches that
yeah, he
year.
didn't wrestle enough matches.
Yeah, I remember that. Oh, that's interesting. Well, hopefully we can have a 2-time Hodge. Maybe I'll win the Sullivan again, right?
All right, Spencer, thanks a lot. Thank you
Thanks.
everyone genuinely for being here. I get Spencer's father, Larry Lee. All right, thank you everyone very much.